Siberia is in the midst of a long and cold winter. The vast white snowfield looks especially spectacular. Moving through the snow is the man we know well, Ake. He is exploring the route to his destination, just to reach the underground shelter he built last summer. For a thorough and satisfying snow camping trip, Ake has his own experience in navigating and makes no mistakes along the way. He successfully arrives at this snow-covered shelter. For Ake, every detail of the shelter is familiar, so he acidly finds it beneath the snow and digs out the entrance. After trekking through snow for so long and starting to shovel snow as soon as he arrived, Ake is breathing heavily. He can only sit at the entrance to rest briefly, but in the extreme cold, he cannot sit for long. Soon his body begins to tremble from the cold. Ake grits his teeth and completely digs the wooden door out of the snow. Ake walks into the shelter and opens the wooden door. The inside is clean and tidy, as if someone lives here often. After hanging up his gloves, Ake checks everything. Looking at this wooden cabin buried deep underground, the spacious interior is divided into several areas, whether it's the bathroom with separate wet and dry areas, or the bright living room, or even the dining area. It feels just like coming home. Ake squats by the fireplace and chops some firewood, placing it into the fireplace. Although the cabin is spacious and bright, it has been unoccupied for a long time and feels a bit cold and damp. Ake lights the dry firewood in the fireplace. The cold and silent forest suddenly becomes lively. As the fireplace continues to raise the temperature, melted snow water drips down the chimney. This is something Ake had expected. As long as the snow in the chimney melts, this small problem will no longer be a problem. Living in the snow-covered forest, Ake needs to collect a bucket of snow for daily water and let it melt slowly by the fireplace. He also boils a kettle of water on the stove for later use. Ake steps outside and uses a shovel to clear the snow at the entrance. To prevent slipping when going in and out, the snow by the window must also be cleared quickly, because once the window is blocked, the indoor lighting will be greatly reduced. After all, the shelter is buried underground. Relying on this small window for light and ventilation, Ake carries his backpack back inside and takes out a sharp saw. He puts on his snowshoes and heads to the nearby woods with the saw to gather some dry branches. The thick snow makes it hard to walk and carry, so he brings the branches back one by one. Before he knows it, night falls and Ake has collected enough wood. He sits on the pile of wood, resting while watching the snowflakes fall. As snowflakes hit his face, it truly feels enjoyable. Ake uses the saw to cut the branches into lengths that fit the fireplace. Soon, he has a large pile. He carries the logs back inside and neatly stacks them by the entrance. The water on the fireplace has boiled, and the indoor temperature with the fireplaces has become warm and comfortable. So after returning indoors, Ake immediately takes off his thick coat and sits at the dining table to replenish some water, trying to warm his body as much as possible. The dining table was originally fixed with a rope. Ake feels the rope blocks his view, so he decides to modify the table. As for the wood, for the modification, he simply repurposes materials from the cabin. He removes a less important beam from the roof, cuts it into 2 pieces according to the table height, and securely fixes them under the table as legs. Now, even if the 200-pound Ake leans on it, the table remains extremely stable. He sweeps the wood shavings from the floor and throws them into the fireplace. The large bucket of snow beside the fireplace has melted. Ake uses the melted snow to fill the water basin by the sink, making it convenient for daily washing. He filters a kettle of water. While waiting, Ake goes outside and chops some firewood, neatly arranging it on the snow. He lights a bonfire on the snow. Beside the blazing bonfire, Ake enjoys the peace and beauty all by himself, leaving all of life's troubles behind, simply enjoying the cozy snow camping moment. After the bonfire burns down, Ake places a grill on top and puts the marinated steak on to cook. Under the intense heat of the coals, the rich aroma of the steak fills the campsite. He brings the grilled steak back inside and sits at the table to enjoy it. After eating his fill, Ake crawls into the warm bed with the warmth of the fireplace. He falls asleep peacefully until the next morning. The morning light shines through the glass. After waking up, Ake boils a kettle of water and washes his face at the sink. The wooden door at the entrance has quietly frozen overnight. Ake opens the door and steps out into the icy, snowy world, bringing this pleasant snow camping trip to an end. In the northern forest of it is still a vast white snow-covered wilderness. The thick snow makes the scenery picture perfect because the fan at home was broken and only spun without wind. He did not follow his gentle wife's instructions to fix it. He was kicked out of the house. With nowhere to go, he thought of this underground wooden shelter known by hundreds of millions. Whenever he has time, Ake comes here. It's the perfect place to lie low, away from the noise of the bustling city. In this shelter, 2 meters underground for wilderness living, he empties his mind. Using a shovel, he digs the wooden door out. Because of the long snowfall, the first thing he does each time is dig the door out from the thick snow. Ake walks inside. The scene is as familiar as ever. The cabin remains clean and tidy, making one want to stay for days. After looking around inside and out, he handles firewood by the fireplace and lights a strong fire with dry wood. As the flames burn brightly, a wisp of smoke rises from the chimney. Under continuous high heat, the snow inside the chimney melts and drips down. Once the snow melts, the draft becomes stronger. Ake goes to the woodshed to chop more firewood. Standing under the eaves, looking at the woodshed he built himself, he can't help but smile. Under the thick snow, the shed is solid and strong. Without any deformation, Ake carries back many logs nearby. In the freezing, snowy land, these thick logs are everywhere. As long as he puts in effort, he can gather plenty. Tired from the work, Ake sits in the snow to rest, while admiring the beautiful snowy scenery. He uses the saw to cut into lengths suitable for the fireplace, making them easier to chop. Ake neatly stacks the cut logs inside the woodshed, then swings his sharp axe, splitting the logs into smaller pieces, making them easier to load into the fireplace and allowing them to burn more fully. Ake carries some chopped firewood back inside and sets it aside for use. In the extreme cold environment, although the shelter is underground and warmer than outside, to live warmly and comfortably, he must stock up on plenty of firewood. As for daily water and snow camping, it is readily available. He fills a bucket with clean snow, then places it by the fireplace to melt, providing water for daily use. After going in and out repeatedly, his clothes are soaked with sweat. He hangs them by the fireplace to dry. At this time, the indoor temperature is warm enough for thin autumn clothes. Ake sits at the table and drinks some water, then takes out something new he brought and installs it above the sink. The moment he peels off the protective film, Ake leans in to admire his handsome face. His narcissistic look is slightly embarrassing. Cold drafts occasionally blow in through the door gap. To fix this small flaw, he brings a large piece of insulation cotton, carefully wrapping the wooden door tightly, effectively blocking the piercing cold wind from a nearby crooked tree. He saws off a curved branch. After measuring the door's movement, he decides to make a handle from the branch. With the handle, opening and closing the door becomes much easier. Calm and steady, he works by instinct. In no time, he secures the handle with a hammer. He returns indoors and sweeps the dust off the tables and chairs. Of course, the entire interior needed to be cleaned thoroughly. After all, in this snowfield shelter camp, Ake is known for being extremely clean. He cleaned every corner of the cabin's. Even the swept-up dust was not wasted. It was put into the fireplace as fuel. The broom and cleaning tools could not be left around. Disciplined as always, Ake hung the broom on the wall. The entrance immediately looked much tidier. After everything was arranged properly, Ake lit a bamboo lamp and chopped the ingredients he brought on the table. He put them into the pot to render fat over low heat. Then he added the side ingredients. Snowflakes drifted down outside. The food in the pot gave off an enticing aroma. Ake bustled about cooking inside the cabin. Various seasonings were sprinkled in. The shelter in the snow looked small yet great. Soon, a steaming pot of stew was ready. From the smile he could not hide. It was clear the meal would be delicious. Ake sat by the table and ate heartily. After eating and drinking his fill, Ake cleaned up the table and spread a nice tablecloth over it. It was getting late. Ake, who did not like staying up late, warmed up his bed early. He lay on the warm and spacious bed, reading his favorite book. Ake always felt sleepy when reading, and soon drifted into a sweet dream. Early the next morning, when the sunlight shone through the window onto his charming face, Ake woke from his sleep. The shelter was indeed warm and cozy. The temperature had reached 20 degrees. Of course, this was thanks to the constantly burning fire. After getting up, Ake went to wash up. He picked at the sleep in his eyes in front of the mirror. After washing, he made a heart gesture to the camera. After a simple breakfast, Ake put on his warm clothes and pushed open the wooden door of the shelter. He came to the woodshed, lit a bonfire, and sat in the quiet snow, quietly enjoying a moment of peace. At this moment, there was no noise, no spinning papers, and no worry fans. Only Ake's charming smile. Perhaps he had figured out how to make the fan spin, and even bring a breeze. In the cold and long winter, blizzards swept across the entire Damasha continent. Ake dragged large and small bags, walking on the thick snow. Beneath his feet was a frozen river. Crossing the river, the underground wooden shelter he built. As the old saying goes, if you walk by the river often, your shoes will get wet. Ake fell into the icy river. Fortunately, he was agile and leapt back onto the shore. Otherwise, he would have been frozen stiff. Ake twisted the water out of his shoes and socks to avoid frostbite. After regaining his composure, Ake did not dare delay. He continued pulling his small sled, collecting some dry bark along the way, to use as kindling for the fireplace. Ake successfully reached a shelter, covered in thick white snow. The chimney had been crushed by the snow, but fortunately the structure was not damaged. He shoveled at the entrance. Although the window was not buried, the entire shelter had only the chimney and window exposed. Ake cleared away the snow, revealing a solid wooden door. It was thanks to this thick door that he could enter safely. Ake pushed the door open and walked into the spacious shelter. His eyes lit up with excitement, because everything inside was intact. There was not the slightest damage. Only the window was covered with thick frost. In the freezing the shelter was powered by batteries. After lighting up the cabin, Ake chopped the firewood he had collected and placed it into the fireplace. As wisps of smoke rose from the chimney, the silent forest gained a touch of warmth. Ake took off his wet clothes and dried them by the fireplace, considering it was not proper to leave them around. He fixed a clothesline on the wall and hung his thick snow boots on it. After falling into the ice hole, the first thing he did back inside was change out of his soaked clothes. He sat by the table and ate some sugary food to warm himself up quickly. Though the journey had been messy, everything changed after reaching the shelter. It became relaxing and comfortable. Ake carried an axe and went outside, pulling his small sled up a slope, then sliding down like a child. At the bottom was the woodshed he had built. Inside were piled large amounts of logs. Ake chopped the logs with an axe, making them easier to load into the fireplace and allowing the firewood to burn more fully. In no time, he had split a whole cart full and pulled it back to the shelter, stacking it all at the entrance before going inside. He took the chopped firewood and neatly stacked it beside the fireplace. With such a large pile of wood, it would last for quite some time. Water for daily use in snow camping is easy to obtain. Ake often melts and filters snow for use, but this time, he wanted a change and went to the river. On the frozen surface, he cleared a square opening, then sawed through the ice. This time he was more careful. Staying far from the ice, he filled 2 buckets with river water. By the time he returned, it was already dark. Fortunately, the shelter was not far from the river. Ake carried the 2 heavy buckets back inside and poured them into the sink reservoir. He also heated some water on the fireplace, using the steam to humidify the cabin. After a busy day, the cabin was covered in dirt. Ake swept the floor clean. After all, he loved cleanliness. He could not stand a messy cabin. He put the swept dust into the fireplace as fuel. With the fireplace burning brightly, the shelter radiated warmth outside, and inside was much cleaner. He poured the boiled water into the basin and washed up with warm water, washing away the day's fatigue. Ake sat at the table preparing ingredients and lit a bamboo lamp. To create a cozy atmosphere, he put the chopped ingredients into the pot, stir-frying them in hot oil. Of course, the side dishes were added too. A pot of hearty stew, paired with cooked noodles. Ake sat in the cozy shelter and began his dinner. After dinner, he went to the bathroom, took a hot shower, and crawled into the warm bed. Falling asleep. Early the next morning, smoke rose in the forest. After waking, Ake stood by the window, looking at the scenery outside. Perhaps the cabin was too warm. Wearing only a hat, Ake went outside, standing at the entrance, admiring the beautiful snowy view. At this moment, the temperature had dropped to -25 degrees. Ake came back to the window, measuring its dimensions. He planned to make a cover board to cover the window at night, reducing the problem of frost on the glass. Soon, using prepared wooden sticks, he made a solid cover, sealing the window tightly. Although the cabin was darker, it did not affect him reading in bed. Immersed in the book's elegant words, he concluded this snow camping trip. Ake carried his pack through the forest, heading toward the newly built underground wooden shelter. Though the vast snowfield made direction hard to tell, Ake still managed to find his way. He opened the wooden door, frozen all winter, and walked into the clean and tidy cabin, resting briefly on the bed before preparing firewood. After all, no one lived here all winter, and the cabin was buried underground. The temperature inside was freezing. Ake lit a strong fire in the fireplace. As smoke rose from the chimney, his snow camping life began again. The shelter was well hidden in the snow. With the door closed, it was hard to spot. Ake sat inside, hanging his snow boots to dry, using the fireplace's heat. Then he boiled a kettle of water and warmed himself by the fire. Though he shivered from the cold, he believed with the fireplace's heat it would soon warm up. To make chopping wood easier, he fixed a guillotine cutter on the wall by the entrance, allowing him to split logs more easily. Though it did not save much effort, it made the cabin more practical. He took a shovel outside and dug through the snow. Taking out a saw, he found some fallen dead trees nearby, sawed them, and carried them back. Only birds singing broke the forest's silence. Ake sawed the collected sticks to equal lengths. Placing them at the entrance as supports, he planned to build a long bench. Though they were meant to be equal, one piece turned out short. But it did not matter. He cut another. After finishing the bench, he sanded the surface smooth. the space beneath the bench just enough to store firewood. He neatly stacked the collected logs together, then sat down to catch his breath and rest for a moment. Although the shelter was buried deep underground, it had a spacious and well-divided layout. Without sufficient lighting, it would be quite dim, so Ake installed wiring on the roof to set up electric lights for illumination. He made sure every area had a light bulb. To provide him with lighting, Ake waved the hammer in his hand, carefully securing the wires to the ceiling. The moment he flipped the switch, every corner of the cabin became much brighter. With such a living environment, viewers watching the screen, are you tempted to experience this kind of wilderness survival? 8 processed some firewood, cut the logs into smaller pieces and placed them into the fireplace. Then picked up a scoop and swept up the debris on the floor. He didn't waste anything and put it straight into the fireplace. After cleaning the cabin, Ake washed up by the sink, then began preparing dinner. He cut the green and red peppers into pieces and hollowed them out, then diced the ingredients he brought in 2 small chunks, and stuffed them into the hollowed peppers, then shredded some cheese, sprinkled it on top, and wrapped everything tightly in foil. Placed it in the fireplace to roast slowly over After the delicious dish was ready, he opened the foil. The melted cheese blended perfectly with the ingredients, stretching into long strings that looked very appetizing. Ake sat at the table and enjoyed his dinner. After eating his fill, he stepped to check the surrounding jungle, afraid that some fierce little visitors might drop by at night. After confirming there were no safety hazards, he retired and slept soundly until the next morning. Ake woke up to a crisp melody. Sunlight streamed into the cabin through the window. After getting up, Ake brewed a cup of coffee and opened the 2 wooden doors leading outside. He stood at the entrance of the shelter, sipping his coffee, while admiring the beautiful snowy scenery, standing before the camera with a bright smile, showing off his clean and tidy shelter. Finally, he put on his snow boots, shouldered his pack, and set off on a new snow camping journey. Some time ago, Ake stayed in his underground cabin. Living in the shelter for a while, the spacious interior made it hard for him to leave. In the 1 bedroom, 1 living room, kitchen, and bathroom cooked delicious meals for himself, enjoying the wonderful solitude in the wilderness. At night, he slept on the spacious bed, dreaming sweet dreams one after another. The warm fireplace improved the indoor temperature. The thick wooden door blocked the harsh cold from the shelter. The bright and spacious cabin made Ake feel comfortable and at ease. As the weather gradually warmed up, the snow that had covered the land also brought the earth back to life. Ake set off again and came here. The jungle was already lush and green. Only the melting snow had turned the roads into mud. Fortunately, Ake, who had roamed the wilderness for years, he strided forward through the jungle just to reach his beloved underground cabin shelter as soon as possible. Along the way, he checked the outdoor camera tied to a tree earlier, which had indeed captured many small animals. When Ake arrived near his shelter, he sensed that something had happened. The smile on his face faded. The melted snow had gathered beside the shelter, forming a large pond. Ake had already expected the shelter might not be safe. When he opened the wooden door and walked in, the once clean and tidy shelter was covered in mud, no longer the beautiful scene it used to be. Judging from the water seeping through the walls, the cabin had endured a harsh ordeal. Fortunately, the shelter was built with solid materials, and the overall structure had not shifted at all. From Ake's body language, one could see his deep affection for the shelter. Ake adjusted his emotions. No matter what, he first lit the fire in the fireplace. Smoke rose from the chimney. This was Ake's positive and optimistic attitude toward wilderness survival. He lit a strong fire with dry wood in the fireplace. The firewood stored nearby had also been soaked, so it needed to be dried by the fireplace. Ake regained his spirit and began cleaning the mud from this survival trip. Although the standing water that flowed inside had seeped into the ground, a thick layer of mud remained on the floor. The cleaning task seemed simple, but was actually quite difficult because Ake lacked proper tools. If he had a carpet cleaning set, it would have been much easier to clean, but he would have to find one, perhaps borrow it from a carpet cleaning blogger. Ake removed the window glass for ventilation. After all, the entire cabin had been flooded and the room was filled with the scent of earth. Without proper tools for the carpet at the entrance, Ake could only carry it outside and wash it in the pond. Rinsing the mud off the carpet, then hanging it on the wooden door to dry on the wall, were also carefully wiped clean by Ake. Truly a person who loves cleanliness. The mud on the floor left Ake at a loss, as a broom alone was not enough to clean it thoroughly, so Ake decided to rinse it with water, letting the mud flow out through the gaps in the floor. The rinse water also seeped into the soil beneath the foundation as buckets of water gradually cleansed the floor. The cabin slowly regained its former There was still some mud in the corners that needed to be cleaned carefully. After a day of hard work, Ake felt sore and tired. He went outside, carried a thick wooden plank, and placed it by the pond as a bench, sitting on it to rest, while admiring the wonders of nature. Because the shelter was still damp and had a pungent smell, Ake could only stay by the pond and chop some firewood, then light a campfire by the water. Firstly, to keep warm, and secondly, to cook food over the fire. Ake chopped the ingredients he brought with an axe, placed them on foil and seasoned them, then wrapped the 2 marinated steaks tightly, and set them aside. He washed the cutting board with water, and sat by the warm campfire, checking the footage from the outdoor camera. The scenes of small animals passing by the camera were both adorable and slightly intimidating. After the firewood burned down to charcoal, Ake placed the foil-wrapped beef on the coals to grill. While waiting for the food to be ready, he returned indoors and cleaned the mud off the wooden bed. After clearing the mud, he laid down a thick moisture-proof mat. With the help of the mat, even if the bedboard was still damp, he could sleep comfortably. Ake spread the bedsheet on the wooden bed, finally revealing a long-awaited smile. He brought the grilled beef back inside and sat at the table to enjoy it. After eating and drinking his fill, he fell asleep peacefully. The time came too, the next morning. Under the pine trees by the pond, birds chirped cheerfully without stop as Ake got up and washed at the sink, then walked outside. The morning jungle was bright and sunny, filled with the sounds of birds. Ake returned indoors and had a simple breakfast. Although the shelter had regained its vitality, there was still a large amount remaining in the corners of the floor. Ake used a shovel to throw the mud out through the window, trying to restore the cabin as much as possible. After cleaning all the corners, the floor became much cleaner. Perhaps in a few days the indoor humidity would improve, but it was still not suitable for long-term living. So Ake shouldered his backpack and set off on the long journey back.